Not streaming.
Good evening and welcome to the General Purposes Committee for Stratford-upon-Avon Town Council. And the first point that we would like to do is appoint a new chairman and deputy chairman. As deputy mayor, I would like to take the right to propose myself as chairman. If someone would like to second that.
I'll second that.
Can we have a vote on that, please? Green ticks, please.
Oh. Oh. I can't. It won't give me my green tick.
Okay, Kate. Okay. I think that's. I think that's every. Yeah, that's everyone. Secondly, can we appoint a deputy chair? Are there any nominations?
Yeah. I nominate Councillor Jill Cleave.
Do we have any other nominees or a seconder for Councillor Cleave?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. And can we vote on that?
Why won't my? Ah, it does come up.
I think that's unanimous.
Unanimous.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we just have one from Councillor Wall.
Thank you. Any declarations of interests on items on the agenda?
I don't know if I should declare an interest in the first aid. Definitely interested and nice to see Martin in.
To receive any, I don't think there are any written requests for dispensation for pecuniary interests, unless anyone else.
Chair, can I just ask people to put their microphones on?
Yeah,
mute?
sorry.
I'm getting Hal round, that's all.
You've muted yourself, Kevin.
Hang on. Can we use the blue hands if anyone wishes to speak? And we'll use the green ticks and red crosses for voting purposes. Thank you very much. Do we have to grant any requests for dispensation? I don't think there are any. Public participation, I think we only have the defibrillator presentation. And so we go to item 7 to approve the draft open minutes of the General Purposes Committee meeting held on the 22nd of October 2019. Already circulated. Has everyone read the minutes and is everyone okay to approve those?
Yep, everyone's.
Thank you. To adopt item 8, to adopt the draft notes of the subgroup meetings reporting to General Purposes Committee, again already circulated. 8.1, the website and social media and newsletter panel. 8.2, market forum meetings, and 8.3, climate change emergency panel meetings. Has everyone read those, and has anyone got any issues they wish to discuss? Mr. Voss? Richard?
Yeah, got it. Just, are we going to talk about the pricing structure? I've seen those come forward, that we had the updated pricing. The only question I wanted to ask at this point was a list of prices for bridging the gap. Is that coming into this point here?
I think that's in the open report, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, if we hold it there. Okay, happy to do that. Yeah, it is. Okay, hold it for that. Yeah, no problem.
So is everyone okay to pass the draft notes and subgroup meetings? Can we have a vote on that if there's no other No other issues?
Just
think that-
waiting for Councillor Foytick, I think.
Okay,
There we go. Yeah, that's everyone.
thank you very much. Item 9, the budget review for 2020-21.
Thank you, Chair. As you will have seen from items circulated in the last week, the June management accounts have now been published, and they are reported in a review that I also sent out with them. There are some significant points to be made. Obviously, most of it stemming from around the response to the coronavirus pandemic. So the key items to note that obviously the town council has lost a substantial source of its alternative income. While the precept is guaranteed and has been received, the first half year's instalment has already been received. The other sources, main sources of income that the town council have all effectively fallen away in the first quarter. So we had no income from the charter market because the markets were cancelled. We've had no income from the town hall because all events have been cancelled. And in some respects, but good news in a way, is that the fee income from the cemetery and tranquility garden has actually fallen, which is possibly a surprise. In terms of looking at the overall picture, the management accounts actually show that we are in surplus at this point, which again is perhaps slightly unexpected on the basis that the budget was drafted to result in a substantial deficit for the year. But the reasons for the surplus at this point are, despite the lack of income coming from other sources, the lockdown has also meant that there has been a substantial underspend on various items. So, for example, the biggest contribution to the budgeted deficit for this year will be the expenditure forecast for the town hall maintenance. And at the moment, all that is on hold because unfortunately we can't proceed with the necessary permits to erect the scaffolding to undertake the work on the on the external fabric of the town hall. So the points to note with that though are that while the income is sort of lost and effectively cannot really be caught up later in the year, the expenditure is really in effect just being delayed. So ultimately, I believe we will still have a deficit. Well, if it's not this year, then it will be in future year to come. Just another item that I just wish to draw members' attention to, because it's pertinent to item sorry, let me scroll down, coming up in the open report regarding expenditure on the cemetery curbing. And it was really just to draw members' attention to an increase in the total budget for the year, which so the management accounts are now showing an additional deficit of £13,000. This effectively relates to expenditure that was due to have taken place in the cemetery in the last financial year. So £10,000 of that was towards work that has already been undertaken on the cemetery driveways. And there was also a £3,000 contribution from reserves towards the cost of a new power barrow. So that expenditure essentially was carried over from last year, and both of those items have now been purchased or paid for. So the substantial overspend that's showing against the cemetery at the moment is down to the timing of the fact that those significant outlays of expenditure have already occurred. And obviously, as the year goes by, they will be prorated out as the budget increases across that period. As I say, those other details are included in my management accounts review. So unless there are any other questions, I don't have any other points to raise at this moment.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just an update on the town hall, really. Although we've deferred all of the external work until next year, we are going ahead with the internal refurbishment, and there's a meeting on the 29th of July to go through the 3 different quotes that we've had and to confirm something. So there will be some spend on that in this financial year, but obviously not as much as we'd originally planned for.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Chair, can I just make one other further point? Actually, I realise it's relevant to an item in the open report. The repairs to the Garden of Remembrance wall, the update there is that the work was due to, as the report stated, the work was due to take place or start next week. Unfortunately, we've got ongoing issues with endeavouring to acquire the correct permits for closing the pavement while the work is undertaken, and that is an ongoing issue we currently have with the County Council, but it is being addressed, and hopefully we will be able to update you with progress, and hopefully the work will start fairly soon.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions for the Deputy Town Clerk? Thank you very much then. Item 10, the Town Clerk's open report. And the 10.1 is to receive a presentation on defibrillator equipment from the Secretary of Community Heartbeat Trust, Martin Fagan.
Good.
Welcome, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Jill. I've assumed from what Lisa was saying, you've already received the printed documentation that's been circulated. So I won't go through the contents of that because it's just wasting time. But what I thought I'd do is just give you a very brief presentation and then give you the opportunity to ask questions. By way of background, we're a national charity. We started life about 11 years ago with the sole aim of actually working with communities to try and help them through this minefield of putting defibrillators in. Most of us in terms of the people within the charity have a medical background in one form or another. Because we're not tied in with any one particular manufacturer, we'll look at all defibrillators, we'll assess them, we'll test them ourselves, we'll look at the locations, we'll look at the needs for that particular community, and then make recommendations based on what we think, given our experience, is probably the best equipment around. One of the things that we've been very strong on doing is working with third parties. So we partner with British Telecom. We were the very first to go to BT and say, have you thought about using these redundant telephone kiosks as defibrillator sites? So that was about 10 years ago. And to date, we've probably taken about 1,000 kiosks off BT and have probably converted so far about 700 of those around the country. We also set the standards for use of defibrillators in kiosks that now everybody who goes down that route has to adhere to. So we set the standards for BT. We also partner with the Rugby Football Union in the UK, looking after clubs and looking after all their artificial pitch programs. We also partner with the English County Cricket Board. We're doing a program at the moment to put defibrillators in cricket clubs around the country. We're also the partners of Rotary. So those of you members of Rotary will probably have come across us anyway, and we just put some defibrillators down the road at the Rotary headquarters in Ulster. As well. And there's a variety of other national organisations we work with. We donate defibrillators as well as doing communities at the end of every year. If we have a surplus, we put that money aside and we use that money for donating defibrillators to needy causes. So in the past years, we've done homeless centres and centres for people coming in off the street to sleep. We've done religious institutions, so we did amazingly St Paul's Cathedral, which is interesting in itself. There are 3 defibrillators in St Paul's Cathedral, one right up in the dome, which is the one that we put there. Recently we've also partnered with the Ronald McDonald charity, and they run accommodation for when children are in hospital. So if you go to Alder Hey, for example, and your child is in hospital at Alder Hey Children's Hospital, Ronald McDonald actually run the accommodation for the parents and the grandparents. So the parents can actually be in the hospital but in accommodation. And so what we've done last year is we totally equipped all the Ronald McDonald homes throughout the UK with defibrillators too. Not that they would be used on the children because they're in hospital, but the grandparents and parents do go through somewhat stressful situations. So that's what we do generally. With communities, we've placed about 5,500 plus communities with defibrillators. all of them with, we think, of the right equipment for what they need for their objectives. We provide governance systems. We provide the only governance system for community defibrillators in the country, which is a free service. Even if people don't buy equipment through us, they can still use the governance system. We've probably trained well over 100,000 people in use of defibrillators and CPR. We're just about to partner with the American Heart Association to bring some of their defibrillator training and their CPR training into the UK, because they've got some fantastic resources which we're going to push out to our partner training organisations. We were the very first to design defibrillator cabinets. We don't actually manufacture our own anymore, but we go out and we buy from third parties. But we also set standards within those cabinets to make sure those cabinets are fit for purpose and are not going to damage the defibrillator in the process. So in very simple terms, that's what we do. When it comes to different types of equipment, there's all sorts of different ways you can do it. That's a basic defibrillator that talks to you. So, you know, when you switched on, you've got audio
Call for help. Follow instructions to apply pads.
I'll just switch that on.
Remove clothing from patient. Powering off.
So it'll talk to you. Every defibrillator on the market will talk to you. But now the trend is actually away from defibrillators that just talk to you, because that may be great if you're good at hearing, but if you're in a noisy environment, or you're hard of hearing, or you're in a tourist area where your first language may not be English, or centre of Leicester or centre of Bradford, that type of defibrillator is actually discriminating against those people. It's saying to you, you can only use it if you speak English. So the trend now is for this type, where you've got a television screen actually on the defibrillator, and when you put the television screen on,
call for help.
You've still got the audio.
Follow instructions to apply pads.
But of course, you could actually block out the audio.
Remove clothing from patient's chest.
And still follow the instructions quite easily.
Locate pads package in back of AED.
So if I switch that off.
Tear powering off.
So that's the trend. And then you go right up to the top end of the spectrum for things like this. Again, TV screen on there. But this will not only work for adults, work for children. It also has pediatric protocols in there, so you can actually use it on neonates, on babies. It gives you visual feedback of your chest compressions, and it will give you positive feedback to say, push harder, go faster, go slower. You're pushing too hard, you're doing great. So it gives you that positive feedback on your compressions as well. It also, you know, has the ability to type in a PIN code. So if a professional, a paramedic or a GP or something like that turns up, you can type in a PIN code onto that and it turns it into a professional machine as opposed to a community machine. So the choice of equipment is very wide. There's about 16 or 17 different models of defibrillator you could use in the community. But what we try to say to people is, let's just think about how you're going to use it. Who's going to use it? Is it going to be used by trained people? Is it going to be used by members of the public who are panicking because, you know, great Auntie Doris has fallen on the ground and they're panicking and they're stressful? Is it going to be used by children on their teacher in school, which has happened? Who's the likelihood, you know, that it's going to be useful? Because that will determine the type of machine that you put into the place. If it's in public domain, then you have to cater for the lowest possible level of its usage. So in a public domain, anybody can use that defibrillator. So that anybody could be your one-legged Lithuanian, doesn't speak English, colorblind in his spare eye, and is very nervous. He has as much right to use that equipment as you or I would do. So if you're in a tourist area, for example, understand that actually the person using it may be a visitor. It's not somebody local. And that also reflects not only in the equipment, but also in the storage, in the cabinets that you put it in. So does that storage protect the defibrillator? So the older type of equipment only has very low IP ratings, so they're very affected by condensation. So does the cabinet give you a risk of condensation, for example, as some do? So metal cabinets give you a risk of condensation. More modern machines are very high protection against moisture, so it's less of an issue. So if you're in a countryside or in the seaside, you would have different conditions for cabinets because of things like salt and salt spray and so on and so forth. So we do the same as we do with defibrillators. We look at all cabinets and we assess them as to whether they're suitable, whether they're good or not, and can they be put into the community. We also help install, particularly where it comes to phone kiosks. We also train in the community, and we partner with training organisations who can actually deliver the training on our behalf. But we also provide support systems, and that support system may just be for the defibrillator and replacement batteries, replacement consumables, but it may also be for the community. And it may be that we work with that community to build some form of resilience program in the community to train up local volunteer responders, for example. Or it may be that they want some form of guaranteed support for the next 10 years to make sure this defibrillator is as good working in 10 years' time as it is now. So all of those are possible, and that's what we try to do. For us, it's a partnership with the community for the next 10, 15 years. It's not here's a defibrillator, bye-bye, we're off, as internet providers do. So that gives you a sort of a grounding very much of to what we are. And the support documentation I sent through to Lisa, I think will give some more background on that. So would you like to ask me any questions?
Thank you very much, Marty. That's brilliant. I certainly know a lot more about them than I did to start off with today. Does anyone have any questions for Marty? Jenny and then Mr. Mayor, please.
Hi, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. If a community raises the funds and actually puts a defib into position, are there any ongoing costs of maintenance, batteries, etc., that community group would need to raise funds for on an ongoing basis to make sure the defib was kept in tip-top condition?
Very much so. It's one of the things, if you look at all the community defibrillators that have been put in over the last 10 years, as we sit here tonight, about a third of them are not working. And that's a frightening statistic, but they're not working for a variety of reasons. Some of those will have been used and awaiting recommission, but an awful lot of them is because people haven't really understood that these machines do need maintenance and support. So you do need to replace the electrodes on a regular basis, usually about every couple of years. So the older machines, the electrodes last for 2 years. The newer machine, the green one I showed you, the electrodes last 5 years, for example. Batteries do degrade. They degrade not only over time, but also if the machine is used, then the batteries will degrade faster. So yes, they do need looking after, and the communities have to budget for going on. Now, again, there's two ways they can do that. They can either just meet those costs as they arise, and those costs will depend on how often that machine is used, or they can do support contracts. So, for example, we do support contracts with the majority of our communities where they pay a fixed amount per year, and it's known, it's fixed. They can raise for that amount every year, and it doesn't matter if it's used 0, once, twice, 3, 4, 10 times during the year, they don't pay any more. So most communities, probably 7 out of 10, choose to support agreement rather than actually having to find the funds to cover those maintenance and support costs. Somebody else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, right. I've got.
Thank you, Jenny.
Right. We did have Councillor Cleve was going to organise training for us, so that's been deferred because of COVID. But I was a bit shocked and surprised by the number of different devices that are available. Can I just check that the training received is generic across all devices? Is that would that cause a problem, or?
When we go in, we work with the local trainers. So we work with an organisation like Jill's. We have our own trainers as well. But basically, what we do is we set a minimum standard for any training organisation we work with to deliver for us. We set a minimum standard, and we say the following things have to be covered: A, B, C, D, E, and F. So those are the core, and those cores are common. It doesn't matter which device you've got, and those things are set. So there'll be things like, how do you do chest compressions? How do you recognise somebody's in cardiac arrest? How do you phone 999? Majority of people have never phoned 999. So when you phone 999, what happens? What's the ambulance service going to say to you? Where you are, you're technically in West Midlands ambulance area, but your calls could equally go to Gloucestershire, and they could equally come to East Midlands because of the location, the way the ambulance service is covered for us. But they all work differently. So we try to make sure that in these sessions, we help advise people what is the best way to do it. What we also do is we say, well, what does one of these do generically? So how do they work? and how does it give a shock and so on. But we'll also spend time looking at your defibrillator in your community to show how yours works. Now, what we did with people like Bath, with Market Harborough, with other locations, is we tried to work with predominantly the town councils to say, could we standardise on a single make of defibrillator, because that makes the training and support so much easier. And we've done that with majority of communities we worked with. So in Bath, for example, where they originally asked us to, we worked with them and we actually had a big map of Bath and we plotted out where we were going to put them. And we had originally put in 58 and they were all exactly the same equipment. And what we've done since is that's now extended to 63, but with two exceptions, they're all exactly the same equipment. So when it comes to training, when it comes to support, when it comes from one person moving from one end of the town to the other, they're not going to get confused by different equipment. So we try as far as possible to standardize. Standardization is good. And we also make sure that things like signage is recognizable and processes and people understand it. Education is good. We're all for education.
Just a slight follow-up in a way, which is in Bath, you were doing that with all, like the town council providing new defibrillators across their area, whereas we're not in that situation. We've mapped the locations of defibrillators in town, but a lot of those are not the town council defibrillators. They'll have been installed by different individuals. And I'm now thinking, actually, do we need to know what type of, as well as mapping where they are, do we need to map what sort of device they are, and do we need to have that the conversation that we're having with you tonight? Do we need to almost have that conversation with all the existing providers to make sure that they are maintaining them and doing something? That's it.
Short answer is yes. If whoever provides the equipment, they should have a maintenance and support regimen. So what we do through our governance system is that we get all the information on there. Every single bit of information to do with that defibrillator is stored on there. The governance system was designed jointly with the ambulance services and the coroner service. Because if you think about it, if somebody dies, particularly where I live in Leicestershire, if somebody dies, the coroner will demand evidence that you've checked it, you supported it, that the pads are in date, the batteries are in date, how much training have you done, who have you trained, when did you train, who did the training, has it been subject to any investigations, has CQC been involved, is there any MHRA recalls on it? All of this information to do with your defibrillator should be stored, and that's what we do. And anybody putting a defibrillator into the community should do that, because that's the guidance that's there. That is the MHRA and the Department of Health guidance, that you should keep those records. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen, because you can go and buy a defibrillator on the internet. So you could just go onto any of the internet providers and say, here's my £1,000, I want to buy a defibrillator. But there's no requirement on you to train. There's no requirement on you to keep records. There's actually no requirement to even tell the ambulance service you've got one. It's a good process to do it, but there's no requirement to do it, because defibrillators were deregulated in around 2005. And since they were deregulated, anybody can do anything they want with them. So in short answer, your question is, yes, you should know the equipment, because that may also have an impact. There is equipment out there that should never be in the public domain, in our opinion, because it's the equipment to put out there. And people have got it because they've gone on the internet or wherever and have bought something cheap. And by definition, something cheap doesn't necessarily mean it's suitable for the purpose to which it's being put. All defibrillators will give a shock, but newer ones have different sensitivities and will pick up different, I'm sure Jill will back me up on this, different rhythms that they will pick up on, give shocks in different levels. So, this one gives a 150 joule shock. This one gives 150, 200 and 250 joule shock, one after the other. So different machines give the shocks in different ways. There are others that will actually automatically go down if it's somebody with low body mass, and others will go up if somebody's on a big body mass. So there's lots of difference between them. So I think, yes, from your point of view, if you're keeping a register of the ones in the town, you should know what they are, who's looking after them, and as I said, our governance system is free. If they want to put it on our governance system, there's no charge for it. And that would actually allow you, we could set you up as the council with a view on every defibrillator and when it was last checked and has it been subject to an investigation and so on. That's easy for us to do. We do that already with people like fire service or Rotary. So where we've put one in for Rotary, so Rotary headquarters can actually see all the Rotary sponsored sites all through the country and are they being maintained. Same with cricket clubs, same with rugby clubs. So the facilities are there to do that. but people are not doing it, partly because they don't know, they've never been told they should do it, but also partly because they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's an action point for us to pick up going forward as to how we engage with all the existing providers of defibs across the town. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Philip?
So, thank you for your presentation. That was really informative. It's quite interesting to learn that most cabinets need to be heated. I was just asking, how suitable are kiosks to sort of house defibs? Is this actually a good use of a kiosk, or is there sort of easier alternative options?
I'm afraid I'm very biased in my answer here. Yes, it's a kiosk, so it was our idea. Okay. The point about defibrillators is that the manufacturer will give the specifications of the machine, and the specifications will include things like the temperature range to which it can be used. Now, in most cases, a defibrillator temperature range is something like 0 degrees up to about 50 degrees centigrade, and within that range, it works perfectly well. If it goes below 0 degrees, you find that the electrodes in the back, these things here, are made out of water gels. They tend to freeze. And they tend to freeze at about -4, -5, somewhere around there. Also, the batteries are lithium batteries, but they start to degrade. As the batteries get cold, they start to degrade. So in those cases, you're obliged to meet the manufacturer's requirements for storage. You've got to keep it within those temperature ranges, which means that if it's an external placement, the cabinet should be heated to keep the insides of the cabinet, the defibrillator itself, above freezing. It doesn't need to be kept at room temperature. And there are cabinets out there that will say our cabinet keeps it at 20 degrees centigrade. That's just wasting electricity. There's no need for it. It's just got to be kept above freezing. But there are also now defibrillators coming along, for example, that one, which you can actually store, and they're resistant to temperature and resistant to freezing. So, for example, that green one, we're actually putting it to the Lake District in unheated cabinets because it's got much more temperature resilience. And there's one coming on there's two coming on the market later on this year. One which is certified down to -20, and there's another one coming on the market later on this year, turn of the year, December, January time, which is certified down to -50. Now, in those situations, you don't need heated cabinets. So it depends very much on the equipment as to how you store it. If it's a heated cabinet, you've got to think about electrical safety. So we no longer use single skin metal cabinets, for example, because they create condensation. You have mains electricity going to the cabinet. Condensation, water, and mains electricity don't work very well. And what you find is that people don't install them with fuses and RCDs. So you're actually potentially creating a situation which is dangerous. So we don't use that type of cabinets at all now. We only use low voltage cabinets, so 15 to 24 volt. So even if you put your fingers on the terminals, it's a tingle. It's nothing dramatic. And generally, we in the most cases, we use either polycarbonate, which is thermally resistant, or we use double skinned. So we don't get the condensation problems. But not everybody does that. That just happens to be our standard for doing it. Come back and answer your question about kiosks. Kiosks are good because they're very iconic, at least the red ones are. They tend to be in the centre of communities. So although BT is closing them down, their phones were put in the centre of a community because it was designed to be got to very easily by members within the community. So they're good from a location point of view. They tend to appear on sat-navs and maps. So if you look at your ordnance survey maps, they're located, so they're easy to find. They, at least with our agreement with BT will carry on supplying the electricity to power the cabinet in there. So, and they also give an extra bit of protection. So yes, they are good locations. You wouldn't just hang the defibrillator there. You still need a cabinet in it. But if it's going to kiosk, the cabinet has to be a low voltage cabinet. You cannot put a mains voltage cabinet in there because the electrics in the kiosk is only rated to 1 amp. So you cannot use anything that draws more than 1 amp.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Do we have any more questions for Martin?
Oh, I think Kate wants some.
I haven't seen Kate.
Kate and Jason.
Right, okay.
And Jason as well. I've tried to put my blue hand up.
Okay.
You, but anyway, right. I'm really shocked to discover that a third of the ones that are up don't work. how do you know they don't work? Because unless you have, I suppose, unless you have a support agreement, how do you know they don't work? And how do people know how to check that they're working if they don't have a support agreement? I mean, for instance, about 10 years ago, we had one put in Tiddington. I've no idea whether it's, I mean, I help raise funds for it. I've no idea whether it's got a support agreement. I've no idea whether it works or not. How do you know this?
I actually know the lady who put it into Teddington. I think it was Trudy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No,
this is the one at
Trudy.
Tiddington Community Centre. There's another one in Tiddington. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
So two parts to that question. One is, how do you check? Well, the machines generally check themselves, usually overnight, and they will tell you. So this particular one here, I don't know whether you can, if I show it very up to the camera, you might see next to the green light, you see there's a green LED flashing. Flashes about once.
Yeah.
You'll see it flash. There we are. Yeah. So whilst that green light is flashing, you know that the electronics have all been checked and the machine has checked itself. So all that you're doing is saying, is there a green light? Yes. If there's a red light, then you've got a problem. So that's quite easy. And different machines do it in different ways. This particular one, I don't know if you can see, it has a little green tick. Other ones have little gimbals. Well, there's different ways of actually doing that. The ones with TV screens, if they find a fault, the TV screen comes on and tells you what the fault is. So it makes it nice and easy.
How does it tell you unless somebody's actually by it? Looking, do you see what I mean?
Yes. Well, they have to go back. We always, if you're following the manufacturer's instructions, you need to check them every day. In a community, nobody does that. It's just too onerous. People just don't do it. So what we say to people is check it every week, which is a nice compromise, really. So it doesn't have to be every Saturday, but on average, every week. And just open it up, have a look in the cabinet, check the cabinet's okay, the lock, if it's locked, the lock's working. See if there's any error codes on here, find out what the error code is, do what you need to do in terms of resolving it. And again, all of that's recorded onto a governance system. So they do need checking on a regular basis, ideally weekly.
Can I ask how much your support agreement is? What you would normally charge an organisation for supporting? I mean, do you vary it from 1 machine and 10 machines, 20 machines? What sort of charges?
If we provide a support agreement, which gives everything, all the batteries and everything, if we're doing a support agreement with the community, the cost will be between £126 and £165 a year, depending on the equipment. So different equipment needs more checking and support and consuming. So the older equipment tends to have much more expensive consumables than the newer equipment, for example. So, I mean, to give you an idea, and you'll understand this one, there's a machine on the market called a Cardiac Science G3, which is very popular. It's a very good machine in its time, but to replace the battery on that is about £250 to replace the battery. This one, which is a modern machine, has the same size battery in it, but it's only £110 to replace the battery. So modern machines are actually a lot cheaper to run than older machines, if you follow me. So your answer to what is the cost of the support, it depends on very much on the equipment and how much it physically costs to replace the consumables, as well as everything else that's associated with it. We offer those support agreements as optional. We don't say to people, you've got to have it. What we say to people is there are certain things you must, got to check it on a regular basis. And if you need support, you can either just buy that support at the time, or you can take out an annual support agreement. The vast majority of people take out an annual support agreement because it's nice and easy. You've got everything included and it's a fixed known price every year, irrespective of the amount of price increases, number of times the defib's used or anything like that. So that tends to be the trend with people working with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Jason?
Thank you. It was just really just going back to the training question, and I don't know if you have any information on people that actually end up using these machines. And you said at the beginning that they need to be non-discriminatory so that anybody can use them. How many, do you know the percentage of people that haven't been trained using them to people that have been trained?
It's a very interesting question. There's a study going on at Warwick at the moment to try and determine that, because nobody knows. Because all the ambulance services record when they get called 999 is, has a defibrillator been used or hasn't it? They don't actually say, has it been used by somebody who's trained or not? What is clearly obvious from anecdotal stories is that the numbers of defibrillators being used in communities is going up. And by definition, most of those people will be untrained. I mean, if, as an organisation, we've trained 120, 130,000 people. But that's a drop in the ocean compared to 56 million in the country. Other organisations will have done the same. You've got programs that are being put out by some of the other charities to try and get people aware to do something. So things like the VHF Heart Start program, which is great to give people the introduction, but it wasn't actually training them to use a defibrillator. It was getting them to do something rather than doing nothing. In very simple terms, if somebody goes into cardiac arrest, that body is going to degrade by about 20 to 23% per minute. So you haven't got long to do something. So the very best people to save that person's life is whoever's around at the time, is members of the public. You can't say, well, have you been trained? No, you can't help then, you know, etc. You just can't. And the person lying on the ground, they don't care whether a person's been trained or not. They just want a defibrillator to be used on them and save their life. And if they've been trained, great. If they haven't, great. But that's where things like the TV screens come in. So I mean, if I just run this in the background, so you can actually see what I mean in terms of what machines nowadays will do to try and help somebody who's untrained. Okay, modern machines are actually designed for the untrained user. They're actually designed so that any Tom, Dick and Harry can just pick up that rhythm. Do not touch the patient. Pick up that defibrillator and just use it because they're confident to do it. So, for example, let's
stand clear. Shock advised. Charging. Press flashing shock button.
So that should be fairly easy for anybody to do. So if I press
shock 1 delivered. It is safe to touch the patient. Begin CPR now. Give compressions.
Now you see what it's doing there. It's actually showing people how to do CPR as well as playing the rhythm that they should be doing it. Yeah. Now this particular machine is quite good. You see the little I button there? If I press that black button here.
Place hands. Compress chest. Press.
Then it goes back to the rescue.
Continue for 1 minute 30 seconds. Powering off.
So I was just going to say that I was just asking that question to make the point really that how useful is training going to be if the defibrillator does it for you, just out of interest.
Okay, I think Jill's going to give a comment on that, but just before I ask Jill for her comment, defibrillators are easy to use. I can train somebody to use a defibrillator in 5 minutes. That's dead simple. Training people how to do chest compressions well, how to recognise what is a cardiac arrest, how to phone 999, how to do a recovery position, how to hand over to a paramedic, that takes time. And it's all these adjunct things that are to do with the training. It's a lot of it is about giving confidence. It's not training, this is how you use a defib, because that's easy. They'll talk to you, they'll show you. But it's how to do all these other adjunct things. A defibrillator is pretty useless. It's a box of electronics unless you've done chest compressions first. You've got to prime the pump for that defibrillator to work. And unless you've done that and people are confident and they know they're not going to kill somebody or crush their chest or, you know, they're not going to get the person waking up and socking them one in the chin, all of these things, unless you actually get that message out there. So one is about giving us community awareness, but it's also how you give adjuncts to that. So what posters do you give in the community? What articles can you write in local magazines? What handouts? We give out, I haven't got one on me, but we give out little credit cards to people, which says, in an emergency, do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to make it nice and easy for people. And then we just give thousands of those out to people. Jill, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I just want to agree with what you said. I mean, I think the difference between the machines there, I would say, yeah, give you all the information, but the one thing, as Martin said, it doesn't give you the confidence. And so many people are scared of that box of gizmos at the end of the day. And that's where the difference comes with training, is it gives you the confidence and the competence to do it. with the CPR along with that. And so many people, especially in the UK, our numbers are so low on people, bystanders actually stepping in. And that's where the training comes in, because if people have had a go, then they suddenly get that confidence, they know that they can do it, because otherwise they're just scared of getting it wrong. Because that's what, at the end of the day, what people go, I mean, I do say, unfortunately, somebody in a cardiac arrest is essentially dead. If you don't give them the help, then they're going to remain dead, but you could help them. And that's where it starts. When you start building it up and start thinking about the confidence side of it, that's where they'll come in. And that's why training is important, because it gives them that confidence to use it, even though it's self-explanatory with those. And I love the TV screen. I love those. I haven't actually seen one of those. I've seen them out there, but I haven't seen one. I want one of them. Do they sell them in the training pack of the version of those?
Actually, this is one.
That's the training. I want one. I'll talk to you separately.
When I go in and I do a training session, I say to people at the beginning, I've only got 2 objectives from the session. One is to help you realise it's why you need to do something rather than doing nothing. And if you're going to do something, what should you do? So there's only two objectives. But sometimes we have a third one, which is we want them so enthusiastic at the end of it that they run out of the meeting trying to find some dead bodies to practice on. But if they get to that stage, we've achieved something. It's about building confidence. You can actually save a life without having a defibrillator there, if you do the chest compressions well. But without doing the chest compressions, without understanding that you can't hurt anybody, they're effectively dead. You know, you can jump up and down on them and they're not going to complain. But if you don't do those chest compressions, the defibrillator's got nothing to work on. So the two have to be hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I have had first aid training, and unfortunately did try and revive somebody that actually did collapse after I had the training, and they didn't survive, sadly, as I know most people don't when you're doing chest compressions. But you're right. The confidence to step forward and put yourself in that position, the training does make a difference.
I don't know if Jill's ever had this experience, but I was actually doing a session 2.5 years ago, and we actually had somebody collapse in cardiac arrest actually in my training session. So we actually did a wrong phraseology. We actually did a rescue, a live rescue or a dead rescue, actually in the session. And luckily we brought him back. It would have been really embarrassing if he'd actually died. But nonetheless, it was successful. But the embarrassing thing was, and again, I hope Jill will appreciate this, but when I was there doing this on him, pressing his chest, there's only one thing going through my mind, which is, God, I hope this works. It can be really embarrassing if it doesn't.
Can I just, and I know the stats vary, and you've probably got some more up-to-date stats, Martin. I was going to say, CPR alone, were you looking about 5 to 7% rate of bringing people back? Whereas with the defib, if it's on in about the first 3 minutes, you're looking at a 75%. I know that is that the stats that are still, because the newer ones probably now even more.
If you can get it within 2 to 3 minutes, yes, you're probably up around that figure. But the reality is that people don't.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, it goes, as you said, it goes down every minute. But to get back down to that 5 to 7%, even with the defib, you've still got a better chance of survival.
The nice thing is the current statistics from Department of Health actually say that the survival to hospital, so ROSC to hospital, is currently running at about 25% because of community defibrillation.
Mm-hmm.
People doing chest compressions using defibs. So to get 25% of people, which in the year 2000 it was only 3%, we've come a long way, huge way. But most of that is education, is getting people to do something rather than doing nothing. And if they're going to do something, start those chest compressions. The ambulance service now, when you online, they are tasked. I sat on the ambulance service committee when we reset all these guidance for ambulance services. The ambulance service operator is tasked now with getting a member of the public to do chest compressions within 60 seconds of their phone call. Nothing else is more important. They want you to do those chest compressions, because as soon as you start those chest compressions, the clock stops. It gives you time to do something else, which is fetch the defibrillator.
If I may jump in as well, Chairman. Yeah, I attended a first aid call. It was just somebody had fainted, and I knew they'd just fainted. They was at the theatre, and they were one of the actors, and they were overheated. But the first thing when they called 999 was to get the defib. So even though it wasn't cardiac arrest, the ambulance service said get the defib ready. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's just a thing. But you know, at the end of the day, that's what the ambulance service want you there. It's like you said, it's get it in and get there as fast as possible. so that it had deteriorated, obviously the DFIB would have been there ready, which is where you've got the high percentage of survival rates.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Jill. Any other questions?
Oh yeah, may I ask, Martin, may I ask, you made a very good point about the sat nav, the phone boxes being on the still on the sat nav systems. Do you know that once they're decommissioned as a phone box, will BT still keep that there? Do you know if they're still keeping them there as a phone box because once they're decommissioned?
It's not down to BT. Ordnance Survey, but you know, it's and Ordnance Survey have agreed to retain the locations, but they're going to change
the symbol.
Maybe next year. They're actually going to change the icon to show a little defibrillator symbol rather than a telephone symbol. Where
fantastic.
Provided a load of information to Ordnance Survey to try and do that.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. That's really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Any other questions?
And if anyone else have any afterwards, please just, you know, get Lisa to email them over to me and I'll try and answer them.
Certainly. Okay. I'd just like to say thank you very much, Marty. And I'm sure it's given us all a great deal to think about for where we go in the future. Thank you very much on behalf of all of the committee. Thank you. And I don't know, I presume you don't wish to stay for the rest of our meeting.
I've actually got another. I've got to go off anyway.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Martin.
Right, okay. 10.2, to receive an update on the changes regarding the production and distribution of the Bridging the Gap newsletter. And as Richard mentioned earlier, in particular, I think Richard wants to look at the costs that we currently have achieved in the recent benchmarking exercise.
Okay, I can pick that up. The last website panel meeting we had, we discussed various options of how to take Bridging the Gap forward. What we eventually decided on was that we would keep it digital mainly, but that we would print around 1,000 copies to distribute to anyone that wants to opt in to receiving them in hard copy, also for putting outside the town hall and for distributing to businesses in the town and you know, hotels, libraries, etc. So I've recently got 2 quotes for the printing of 1,000 copies. One both local companies, because that's what the panel was keen to stick to, local companies. First quote I've got is just find it. So I had it. First quote is would cost £475, and the second quote would be £366. You'd like to discuss. We have got a website panel meeting next Tuesday, which I'll be sending the papers out tomorrow, and which will be discussed further, but any feedback from here would be good.
Jenny. And then Richard.
I've got no trouble with a digital copy going out to everybody because it doesn't really cost that much. I mean, it does have a cost, but it doesn't cost that much. Given the demographic of our town, where most people, where it's a fairly elderly population, I think so many people in the town, it just won't even be on their horizon. It will just be nowhere for so many people because of the demographic. A lot of young people aren't particularly interested in town council, so it might actually pass them by. It just worries me that we're actually losing. We're losing a way of contacting and letting people know what's going on. I know that back page of free advertising for community events was very much appreciated, and hopefully at some point in our future we are going to be able to get back to community events when that kind of free advertising was very much appreciated. It just worries me, just worries me, that it becomes irrelevant.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, so I'm entirely with Jenny there. I think it's the wrong move. I think there's some things you have to do, whether or not you like doing them, and this is one of the things that you should do. I think there's a multitude of reasons why. When you deliver it to a household, one, you might get 6 people looking at it. So it's not just about the number of copies, and that's the principle that newspapers run on anyway. So I think that's a bad mistake. And in terms of delivery, I didn't see anyone look at Look Local as a delivery option, and that they're delivering regularly. They are probably in Stratford town the most reliable of all the deliverers, and we all get Look Local, I'm guessing. You don't? Well, okay, you're in the minority then if you don't. They deliver across the town. I'm not happy. I think to imply that we should have 1,000 waiting just for people to come and pick up, it ain't going to work, and it will backlash on us very badly. So I would be, if that decision's been made, I think it's a wrong decision, and I'm opposed to it. I think we can afford to do it. We could save 1,500 quid quite easily on other areas if we had to, and we're talking with Look Local £25 1,000, so you can work that one out accordingly. It's perfectly practical and possible to, or £30 1,000 maybe. It's perfectly practical to get it done.
Thank you, Richard. Jason.
Again, yeah, I'm with Richard and Jenny on this. I think it's really, I don't think there's any point printing Bridging the Gap if you're only going to leave a few outside of the town hall and have a digital copy. I just don't think it's going to get to people. And I think the point of us being a council is that we need to look at all ways of communicating with residents, not just some. So I would certainly be in favour of it being distributed to every house.
Thank you, Jason. Any further questions?
Jill and Kate.
Oh, I can't see either of those, to be quite honest at the moment. Right, Jill.
Yeah, I think that it was the distribution that was the problem. I think Lisa can correct me on that. I don't think we did look local, so that might be an option. Yeah, we do need to reach the demographic. That was something that was discussed, but it was just how to do it. I know there's people who have said they never got it even with the midweek, because the midweek didn't go everywhere. So I think that is vital to find out. If we're going to deliver it, it's just to make sure it does go to the right households, because we did talk, I think, in the meeting as well about doing another paper copy, getting it delivered, and then asking people to do an opt-in so we could post it or send it, but just deliver it to the households that want it, because there are people that don't bother either. So lots of ideas were thrown around. But yes, obviously we want to make sure that everybody who wants to see it sees it, and that's the priority.
Thank you, Jill. Kate?
Yeah, Richard, did you mentioned a cost there of £30?
Look Local is £30 1,000, so that works out at, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot of money then. How many thousand do we
Well,
normally...
15 times 30, 15 times 30, 450 quid. So you clear it for £2,000, printing and distribution. Just on Jill's point, people don't know they don't want it. You never know what you've lost till it's gone. And I can tell you now that people even don't read it. You know, we either don't do it. You can't half stop beating your wife, can you? You either do it or you don't do it. And we're committed to doing it. And I think it could be better. We all know that. It could have more in it, more community stuff, more adverts, things. We could be really helping small, privately owned, small independent shops as well, free advertising. There's so many things we could be doing. Not to do it is wrong. That's my gut feel.
Yeah, sorry, I was asking a question. is there? Could we look? Could I make a proposal that we look into how much Look Local will charge for delivering it to the town? But yeah, I mean, can we look at that, and can we look at that cost? It may not come in time for your meeting next week, Lisa.
I've got I've got the agenda to send out tomorrow, so I'll send an email.
Okay. I mean, if I can make a proposal that we look at that cost. I mean, I do tend to agree with everyone else. It's you either do it or you don't do it, and you don't do it sort of in a half-hearted fashion. I personally like the Bridging the Gap. Long before I became a town councillor, I enjoyed picking it up and reading it, finding out who was who. So yeah, can I make a proposal that we look at that cost, please?
Certainly. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, may I second that?
And can we vote on that, please? Thank you. Jenny, I think that's unanimous then.
Yeah.
Jenny, would you just like to ask a question there?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we ought to look at the cost of how the paper we use and everything else. You don't need this heavy, glossy paper. We can actually produce something which is slightly cheaper. But I know that Alveston used to be on the delivery round, and Ian and I used to go out and deliver Alveston ourselves. So, I mean, if there are any gaps, it's possible that those gaps can be filled by councillors themselves.
I was actually going to suggest that, Jenny, and obviously we do have the support group volunteers as well, that we may consider also.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I agree with everyone that it's very important. Excuse me.
Looks like he's
Kevin,
frozen
you've
now.
frozen. Kevin, you've frozen. Can you hear us, Kevin? You're frozen.
No. Just while we're waiting for Kevin to return, can I just check with Lisa that you'll put on that will be an agenda item for next Tuesday?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll put that on the agenda that I send out tomorrow.
And we'll see. And if we can get something from Look Local before then, that's great. But at least it'll give us something to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure in the notes there was definitely a conversation about whether we could or should use the support group to deliver Bridging the Gap, and I think we decided that we wouldn't do that.
Absolutely correct, Mr. Mayor. The volunteers, the support group, have signed up on the basis of helping during a pandemic and not delivering a newsletter.
Yeah.
And also, Jenny, we haven't used glossy paper for the last two Bridging the Gaps.
Yep, thank you.
We downgraded the quality of the paper to which, you know, I didn't think made any difference. I thought it was okay. And
a lot of people prefer the matte paper.
I will tell you that we use for an A3 in Studley, and it's £30 1,000. So, you know, even if you don't get it, even if you said £40 1,000, you ain't gonna. It's about their capacity, and they're much happier delivering in a fairly tight area. And I do accept the fact that areas slightly out of Stratford town centre, and that's Alveston and, you know, those areas, you know, what we call the outliers, may be more difficult, and we may have to deal with those separately. But there's no reason why not. And so I think you'll find, then they'll come back pretty quickly. If you're struggling, Lisa, let me know. I've got contacts there.
Thank you.
You muted, Kevin.
Philip.
Thank you. So for complete transparency, I think we've had previous communications in Bridging the Gap to ask for feedback on format, content, delivery mechanism, and we got a very low number of responses. As discussed in the meeting, we're very, very keen that everyone that wants to have this still has it, but the distribution costs were prohibitive at the time. So I'm absolutely in favour of looking at Look Local and any other options available. That there is a point by which, with proactive sort of a healthy opt-in list, with proactive reaching out to vulnerable communities, nursing and care homes, and reaching out to our own local residents, that actually sending it directly to the people that that want to have it only would save us potentially quite a lot of money. And that was the reasoning behind the decision. But considering that this is an area which requires quite a lot of expertise, and I'm suggesting that someone such as Councillor Voss could join the social media and newsletter panel to help out with this during this crucial decision making.
I'm happy to do it. And just looking at the cost, if you say it's 400 quid to do 1,000, you're going to save at the most 1,500 quid. So I don't think it's about the money. I think it's about the logistics, the practicalities, and I just don't know how we would find out who would want it and who wouldn't want it unless you did a door-to-door survey. So, you know, what we need to do is to get best value by enhancing the product and getting the right delivery mechanism. I think it's a matter of logistics, and I'll happily come on board with that when I'm wanted.
I'll send you the invite for next week's meeting.
Oh, lucky me.
Any further questions on that? Can we move on to the next item then, which is to receive an update, which I think Phil's already given us on the update of the rebuild of the wall at the Memorial Gardens, and I think he's obviously said that that's subject to permits being available. It should have started next week. So does anyone else want to have any questions regards to that, or any or comments? Okay.
Kate's got her hand up.
Kate?
Yeah, Lisa, would it be just if you could just stop, because I see Phil's left the meeting, if you just stop Phil an email to say if he does have any problems, it is in my county ward. If there's any problems about road closures and if I can help in any way, please let me know.
Will do, thank you.
.4 to consider the next phase of the cemetery curbing.
Yeah, so I sent the photos of some of the photos of the work that's currently already been done, and the quotes that are outlined for the next phase of the work. It's just considering as and when you'd like to go forward with that.
Does anyone have any comments on or questions of when we would like to progress? Mr. Mayor, and then Jenny, please.
Yeah, I think we've already made the decision that we will do the curbing right throughout the cemetery. So it's really just a question of timing. And if we've got the money available in the budget, then I don't see any reason why we should delay. We just get on and do it. But, it's a question of whether we got the money in the budget. And I suspect on the basis that we're currently underspending because of various things, I don't think that's an issue. I'd suggest that we just get on with it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jenny?
That was exactly what I was going to say, actually. So the mayor said exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that, or do we have a vote just to make sure everyone is happy with that? Okay, thank you very much.
Kate's got her hand up. Are you?
Kate?
Sorry, that was me voting because I can't get my green tick.
Ah, right. Okay. Okay. Right. I'm losing most of my internet at the moment, so you'll have to excuse me. I've just lost completely. Where I was.
You want some help? It's signage for.
That's right. I've got it now. I've got it back.
Okay.
Right. To consider signage opportunities for SDC owned amenities.
Yeah. So we had the bus shelter installed on Wordsworth Avenue. I think it was done in March. After a lot of issues, but it's finally there. And it was Councillor Ian Flagley's idea to label it as such with a plaque or some sort of notice to say that it was owned by Stratford Town Council, and that we could do that going forward for all of our amenities. I've spoken to the company that supplied the bus shelter, who have given the quote for, it's almost like a Perspex sort of sticker to put on it, and the price is in the report for you. So it's just whether that's something you'd like to do going forward. Obviously, if it's a bin or a bench, then the signage might be different per item, but for the bus shelter, that's the kind of thing we're looking at.
Thank you, Lisa. Liz, and then Jill, and then Jason.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea. I agree with it. I was just concerned to make sure that the signs were permanent enough. If it's essentially a vinyl leaf that's stuck on the bus shelter, I can imagine everybody who hangs around at the bus shelter waiting for the bus will be sitting there picking away to see if it will come away. So I would just recommend that we can make sure that they're really permanent, got a good long life on them.
I can check that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Jill and Kate.
Thank you. With the 125 each and then post and packaging at 24.95, was there a chance if we bought more that the price would come down? So if we both bought a few of those,
that's possible. Yeah, I can email them and ask them that.
It'd be just interesting if we're going forward for using those on different ones, whether we have other built bus shelters they'd be suitable for use on, which I'm not sure if we do. Yeah, if we don't, then obviously one off is fine.
Well, I guess we could get some in case of installing more in the future, but I don't know how often we'll be doing that. So.
Thank you, Jill. Kate?
No, I don't wish to say.
All right, so okay. Jenny, and then Mr. Mayor.
I'm not. We have put on bus shelters in the past, I think. I'm not sure if they were county or whether they were town. I know that Mick Crutchley, when he was a town councillor, got a number of bus shelters put into Tiddington. Just wonder if it's worth looking back to see if those were town council bus shelters, and perhaps put a retrospective plaque on them, because if we have actually produced street furniture, it's quite a good idea to let people know that we've done it.
Thank you, Jenny. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's just me, but £125 sounds incredibly expensive for a little bit of vinyl to go in a bus shelter. So, I mean, alternative quotes, obviously. But and if we are going to do something on all of our existing amenities, I mean, there is a list of all of them somewhere. We've got loads. I think we've got 8 benches in the Furze Garden alone. So we're actually looking at a really substantial cost here. So I just think we need to be careful how we progress here. The new bus shelter, you used to think putting something on 6 hours, really good idea. We're actually progressing it for every existing amenity at that sort of cost is going to be substantial. So we just need to go in with our eyes open is what we're committing to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard?
Yeah, some of you will know that on the hanging baskets on Waterside there are plaques there I think the Fragile still have a plaque. They've lasted a long time. Now I know they're slightly different. They were nowhere near, they were 30 or 40 quid. It was a special vinyl peel off on a metal base, and okay, they were screwed around the hanging basket pole. So I do tend to agree with Councillor Jackson here that that's seen quite a lot of lolly for those. If it's a one-off, it doesn't matter, but if we're going to do plenty. And by the way, I didn't realise we owned all those benches in the Firs, because I do remember the district council taking responsibility for installing them. So I didn't know we owned all of them. We did. Yep.
Thank you, Richard. I think from my point of view, we do have on the ping tables, which we introduced last year, Table Tennis England actually produced a Stratford-upon-Avon Town Council sticker to go on every table, and so they're actually out there already. So it is a good idea, but I think for projects that we're doing from now on, I think retrospectively to do anything, I agree with Mr. Mayor and Richard that it would probably be too great a cost. Jenny.
Kate's also got a hand up.
And Kate.
Kate was
Jenny.
Okay, do you want me to go first? I was just simply
Kate,
going to
carry
agree
on then.
with the mayor and with Richard. I think it seems quite a lot of money as a one-off. I agree, but to do lots and lots of them, I don't think we've got that sort of money in the budget.
Thank you, Kate. Jenny.
If the one-off can be far cheaper, if we actually have a look around to see if we can get a much better deal, I think that's the route we need to go. If we were going to do any retrospective, it wouldn't be wholesale. We need to actually have a look at what was feasible and what wasn't feasible.
I have sought another quote, but they have yet to get back to me, but I can update everyone when I receive that.
Okay. Jason. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, it was just to say that I know at work we use a local signage company called Ace Signs. I don't know if you know.
That's who I've asked for.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's fine then.
So
but yeah,
they'll get back to me.
But generally, yeah, it's something I think Stratford Town Council should be telling people what we're providing, and so yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with the sentiment that's been expressed already.
Thank you, Jason. Do we wait for the second quote to come in then, Lisa, before we do anything further?
Yep, you can do. I think the idea was that it was going forward with our amenities and not necessarily doing ones that we've already got. But I guess that wouldn't be very inclusive of all of them. But yep, I can wait until I get the next the other quote and send to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Richard, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just to say, I found the cost of those plaques. There were 7. They were aluminium with vinyl and scratch laminate, and with that they were 250 quid for 7. And that was, and I know they're different. That was in that was 5 years ago. I accept that as well, but it's just an indication of an option, which is a lot less. So I can, and that was just a local printer who did that, who we've used. It always comes back to printing and me, doesn't it, Phil?
Thank you, Richard. Philip?
As a point of protocol, can I ask what we're being asked to consider here? Because we seem to be very focused on cost, but I don't remember us making sort of this decisions in this minutiae before.
It was to just decide whether you would like to sort of label your amenities going forward, really. That was the decision that we were making, and then I'll obviously then look into costs. That was just one cost that I got.
Cool. I propose that, I think what everyone's been saying is really useful. I think that we sort of label new amenities moving forward. I'd like to propose that.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Jill. And can we have a vote on that, please? Thank you very much.
I'll look into different quotes and I'll send those to you when I get them.
Okay, then finally, although it's not on the agenda, I think what everyone wanted to discuss the new terms of reference for the committee. I presume everyone's had chance to read through them. And does anyone wish to make any comments or on the subject?
Oh, if it's not on the agenda, I'm not quite sure how we can make it.
Well, I think
how we
Philip,
can discuss it.
Yeah. Well, in that case, yeah. If that's the case, then it was just that I was asked earlier on today, as it wasn't on the agenda, whether it could be discussed at the end of the meeting. So if we'd prefer to leave it till the next meeting, I don't have any issue with that.
If anyone has any comments, if you let me have them, I can send them to Charles, who clerks the Mayoral Civic Ceremonial and Events Committee, and he has one next week. They can all be discussed in one big lump there, because the two committees we're discussing have kind of overlap the two anyways.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. In that case then, can we just agree the date of the next meeting?
Yeah, 20th of October.
20th of October at 6 p.m.
If we're on Zoom, if it's in the town hall, it'll be.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Chair, this Zoom meeting was so much easier. I noticed I had its technical problems.
Yeah, my internet was rubbish to start off with.
But it was so much easier than the district council meeting on Teams yesterday, which was a nightmare. This was awful. This was brilliant in comparison.
All down to the chair.
Well, apart from my internet, apart from my internet, which I must apologise for.
I did think Deputy Chair might have to jump in there at some point.
Ready.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to comment?
Yeah, sorry, I probably should have raised it earlier on, but the first